So a little more on the hydraulic lines. I'm going to replace this line on each side and this line, right? Those have swivel connections on the bottom, right there, and then fixed connections on the outside, right around over here, right there. You can see this new hose that the previous owner put on. Really lucky about that because that's a long hose. That goes all the way up to the elbow on the boom. On this side it is the original hose. It will eventually have to be replaced. I don't know. Maybe today, maybe not. It's not in the best condition, but it's not all too... Well, actually, yeah, look at that. This just looks tricky to me. That looks a little tricky. Okay, I'm going to break this. I'm going to break this free to take this hydraulic line out. And the swivel is going to be the one furthest towards the end. If the connection has a swivel, which it should on one side at least, it'll be the one furthest to the end. This is the crimp and the fixed, and there's the swivel. And to loosen the swivel, you're going to turn it counterclockwise. So from this perspective, we're going to turn it that way to loosen it. And we'll just hold this with one wrench and loosen with the other. Just remember, that gets a little confusing when the line is coming at you. You don't want to forget which way you're turning it. And so I actually already broke this free. I had to give it a few taps with a hammer, but it gets kind of loud on the video from banging with the hammer. So here you can see, got that swivel loose. A little dish underneath to collect the fluid, which will come out. See, there's some this paint getting down towards the bottom, so before I pull that open, I'm going to clean that off so I don't get paint into that tube. There was not that much fluid that drained out of there. That's all that you see. So now to pull this hose out so I can take it to the hose shop, I'm going to remove this side, which does not have a swivel, so let's look at that. There's no swivel, there's just the fixture end here, and this is a 7/8 as well. So we're going to turn this same deal counterclockwise with respect to this position is going to be this way towards the camera. So I already broke this free a little, but there you have it. And then once you have it loose, you pull this hose out there if it'll fit, I'm not sure, and then just spin it. You don't even need the tool for it. So clean this up a bit. There, you can see that. Oh wow, that hose is even more torn up than I realized. Look at that. I was able to pull the hose out through the little opening here. If I wouldn't have been able to, then I could have just cut it in half and then spun it out if it was too stiff, but it came out. So now I can just turn it, and there it is. So this hose will get replaced. Look at that. It really doesn't look like it was leaking yet, but we'll pull the one on the other side off as well. See the other side. Same hose, the other side, one without the swivel. Still gonna go that way. for counterclockwise. I'll try to pull that hose through again. Got it. There it is. Let's see how similar these two are. So they're very similar. They're identical lengths. They're just very old, and so they've lost a lot of elasticity. But I did notice there that they both have O-rings, those little black things. Don't forget to cover up the ports. And to label the hoses and their locations somewhere so you remember where they go. Alright, so since I've decided I'm going to replace basically every hydraulic line in here, I'm going to take some time to clean this area up so I don't get dirt falling into my ports and stuff once I loosen everything. So I think I might be able to reuse this, but I'm probably going to replace that. But all of these painted hoses I'm going to replace. And it looks like the easiest way to do this is going to be to remove this hose first. Right here. It's got a swivel on each end. To remove that first. And that'll give me access to the end here of this hose, which goes to the left-hand transmission. That's connection down there. Goes into looks like a 45, and it looks like it has, can't tell, doesn't look like it has a swivel on that side. Looks like it has a swivel only on this side. And then the next hose that I can probably remove would be this hose, which goes from the pump to, I'm not sure where that goes to. Somewhere back by those check valves, I think. And then I'll be able to remove underneath it, that one coming in, which is the hose from the flow divider, which I've already got disconnected on one end. And I've already looked at that. It's only got a, oh no, I'm mistaken. Does that have a, that actually does have a swivel. Oh, you know, I might be able to get that out. Might be able to get that out right now. And then I'll remove this hose. I'm a little worried here because this looks like Teflon tape, some type of thread seal, and I don't know about that. And the same deal over here. So I'm not sure why I'm seeing that. But anyway, that's got to get gone. So that's going to be the plan. But first I'm going to clean it up, make it look nice, get the dirt out of my way. Okay, so back in the cab, I'd love to do this with a tripod, but there's just not enough room. I had to remove some components to get to the suction line. The suction line, if it was in place, which it's not because I already removed it, and I was not in the mood to make a video when I was removing it, runs from here, which is the fitting on the hydraulic tank, down in about 16 3/4 inches to the bottom side of the pump, which is the blue component here. Mine was very messed up. It was leaking, air was getting in, really bad shape. I'll show you later in the next part of this video. I think the reason it hadn't been replaced before by the previous owners is probably because it's tricky to get to. And even once you get access to it, you are faced with some really large fittings. The swivel on this hydraulic line is a 2-inch swivel. You don't see it here because it's been removed. But even this fitting here that you do see is 1 3/4. And the other end that goes into the pump is not a swivel, and it's a 1 3/4. So even if you have some really big wrenches, finding a place to put those wrenches, getting them in place is just not possible. You have to remove some things. So if you remember, Normally what would be seated right here is the flow divider. This is the flow divider. So in the other videos you'll see it just sitting there. And the flow divider has one line going in where it says E, and then two lines going out. One of those lines goes to the right side steering column or steering cylinder, and then one line goes to the left side steering cylinder. And those actually connect to these closest to the rear. So label all your ports after or before. Here, although this is marked B and A, I was already writing them when I wrote A to A, B to B. Then on the steering cylinders, you have connections, hoses I should say, that go to the hydraulic manifold. And those are C to C and D to D. My plastic fell off there. But cover these all up with plastic so that you don't get dirt in there. And if you do get dirt in there, get it out. There is a specific procedure that I'll show later when you do start up after you get all your hydraulic lines done. Since it's not just a drain, you're opening up hydraulic lines, especially that line to the pump, and I'm going to remove some lines as well, other lines out of the pump. You want to make sure that you're starting it up in the right way to get the contaminants out and make sure things aren't running dry. Pump's not running dry. Alright, so this is one of the hoses. This is one of the hoses that connects from, for example, the steering cylinder to the flow divider, which you can't see, or the steering cylinder to the hydraulic manifold. These are all the same hose. They have a larger connection, don't know the size yet, but I can get that later. They have a larger connection on the side that connects to either the flow divider or the hydraulic manifold, and the smaller side which connects to the steering cylinders. These are all the same part number from New Holland. I forgot to mention in that last cut, the line coming out of the flow divider is this. This is E. Not coming out, going in. This is the line going into the flow divider, and it's a large diameter. So the flow divider here, that connects like that, and then the two smaller lines come out to each steering cylinder. This line I'm going to replace. This runs down a certain length to the pump. You can't see it, but it's underneath this fitting here. So I'm going to have to remove quite a few hoses. I'm going to replace all these hoses anyway, I've decided. Especially this one. Like, what the heck is going on here? I really hope, look at this, like 180-degree turn, and it's all messed up. And it's all bubbly, and over here, that same end of the hose. So I'm hoping this hose is actually a little shorter, and that's why it's shaped like that. Maybe someone bought it slightly wrong length and was just going to use it anyway. You can get all of the hose lengths from the New Holland documents. Parts documents, go to like Messick's or AV Spare, and just sift through the documents looking for the lengths. And those lengths give you the full hose length, including the fittings. So that's really, really helpful. Okay, now I'm laying on the left side of the skid steer, looking up at where the suction line would be. This plastic is covering the fitting that's on the hydraulic fluid reservoir, and then over here you can see that other bit of plastic. That's where it goes into the pump. So you can see you don't have a ton of room. So what I did was I held a wrench on the fitting, a 1 3/4 on the fitting, the fixed fitting, and then from under here I put a pipe wrench, a big pipe wrench that would open up to 2 inches. I put it on the swivel, the 2-inch swivel, on the hose, and I broke it free here, and then moved over to this end with the pipe wrench and broke it free until I could spin the hose, but it's really tight in there. Alright, so this is the suction line, and this is the hose I got at the hose shop. It was only $6. It doesn't need to be any kind of real special hole. This is way above what that suction line sees. It doesn't have quite as much steel as the original did. Maybe it does. I guess it does. You can see there. But this is the original. You can see how torn up it is. It's deformed. He had it in the vise, the guy at the hose shop, because he pulled this out for me. But this is that big 2-inch swivel, and this is pretty difficult to get a tool on. Like I said in the other video, you're really kind of left with just a pipe wrench, unless you want to cut up a really big 2-inch jumbo wrench. But the pipe wrench will work. The nice thing is, again, these are reusable, and even on the New Holland docks, you just have these hose clamps that go on. So I got some new hose clamps. I might be able to, I think I can reuse this one, but that other one's pretty shot. So all you're doing is just fitting these in. These are barbed, and clamping them down. So I'll throw that on another video. It's a real nice long barb too. So this literally $6. Okay, so not sure how I'm going to get this out, but the guy at the hose shop who got the other end out for me said he just kind of persuaded it with a screwdriver and a saw. So I think that's what I'm going to try first. Put it in the vise and see what I can do. I'll let you know what works. It's definitely worth it to save the probably a $10 or $12 fitting on each end. I have the hose in the vise, and I've been able to make some headway here, breaking through by using the screwdriver here. It's a long screwdriver, and just kind of putting it behind as much as I can, and then tapping it with the hammer. You get the idea, until it gets under the steel, levering up and breaking the steel, and then going a little bit further. So that's the gist. See how close I am. See these barbs, pretty long, and that's there's the hose. Pretty torn up. So let me measure these barbs. So here are the fittings on that suction hose. This is the 2-inch swivel, 1 3/4 inch fixed, 1 3/4 inch fixed. Total length on this is 4 3/8. I didn't measure this one before he put it in at the hose shop, but it's probably similar. Probably just like this one, just with a swivel. So let's see if I get any other information off of this. Don't see anything else. This is a JIC, or it was marked that, I believe. 20. That says 20. So just make sure your new hose is nice and clean inside and out. Clean up the barb inside and out. See how dirty it is inside. And then put it together. Then clean it again. And then install it. $6 suction line. So there you can see right there the opening where the suction hose goes. And that's the fixed end. I'm going to go ahead and put it on now to prevent dirt getting in there, since I'm going to be cleaning and brushing dirt everywhere and using the compress there. I can still get all my hoses off with this in place, so I'm not going to take any chances. I'm going to just go ahead and put it back. This is the completed suction line now with the fittings back on in place. I have this hose clamp good and tight. That hose clamp is loose right now because I got a minor clearance issue. This is the end that screws into the pump, and if I have that hose clamp there, I can't turn it. It bangs into the transmission. So I'm just going to pull it back, turn it in, then push it back, tighten it up with the screwdriver, and then get the swivel connection which goes on the hydraulic end, the hydraulic tank end, and that'll be it. There's the pipe wrench on that 1.5 inch fitting. Just the easiest way to close that, since you don't have a lot of room down here. Definitely not enough room to turn a 1.5 inch wrench, and not even enough room to turn my crescent wrench. It opens up wide enough. So the hose clamp, it actually didn't work what I was hoping to do, so I had to open it up completely and push it back behind, because that almond shaped part right there on the transmission, it's so close to, it's touching that hose, and I couldn't get it past it. So I just opened it up all the way, and then went behind it and closed that hose clamp. And now for the swivel end. I can get the swivel end started a bit more comfortably up here. So that's what I'm going to do. That took a little more effort than I was anticipating, because it looks like this hose is just a tiny bit longer. And so to prevent from cross-threading it, I really had to take my time, a little bit of strength to pull it back. Not easy to deform a hose of that diameter, but in case you're putting it on and you hear it snap, that's a pretty good clue that you might be cross-threading it. So back it off. It should, if it's clean and you're on, you should be able to turn it by hand. You shouldn't have to have a tool until you get quite a bit closer to the end of the swivel's track. I cleaned it up a bit, and I am able to get that line from the flow divider off without removing anything else. It's right back there. Alright, so since one thing leads to another, I've decided that because I now have all these hydraulic lines out, I've really opened up the area that I need to pull that transmission out. And I know that I have a leaking seal somewhere in that transmission. I think it's the shaft seal, because I can see, having the chain cases open, oil leaking from that output gear down and into the chain case. It's not a huge leak, but it's leaking. And so I'm going to pull the transmission out to have a look at that. The only other hose I think that I removed since the last video is this hose here, which goes from the control valve up and under these tubes, under this tube, real tight in here, and then back to this rear manifold. And I found out from Surplus Center that I can get a lot of these hoses pre-made, and so they're so much cheaper than going to the hose shop. You can print this out to help you identify the JIC fittings, and this is both ends on this are a -12, and they sell an 18-inch with those fittings and swivels on both ends for $18, or I can go to the hose shop and pay $80. So yeah, guess where that hose is going to be coming from. Same thing with these cylinder hoses from the the steering cylinder. Sometimes they're also called servo cylinders. The steering cylinder to the manifold, and the steering cylinder to the flow divider, which is out. There's 4 hoses total. Hose shop wanted about $40 a pop. I could get them from New Holland maybe for about $15, but they were old stock, so they would be who knows how old, sitting on the shelf. Well, these ones are supposed to be like 17 inches. I can get them at 18 inches and just buy a fitting to change, because this has one end is a 4 and the other end is a 6. I can buy the fitting for like $1.50 from Surplus Center, and that hose for $8. So I'm basically going to try to get all my hoses from the Surplus Center, them being prefabricated. I will have to buy some. Extra fittings to go here for those hoses, which go to my boom cylinders, because those have male ends. They have a female side here, and the hose, a female side here, and then the male side on going into the wait, is that right? Yeah, male side going into the boom cylinders. But you can buy those fittings and you can step down sizes. You can change the ends from male to female, so much cheaper. surpluscenter.com.